This cylindrical green thing and the one right below it that's silver are pneumatic hammers. They're for sculptors. They're fairly fine working tools. Um, they're not really powerful enough to drive a punch. Um, and the ones that they sell for sculptors cost a fortune. It's like $200 or $300 for even a small one. So I thought, well, why not just try one of those things that mechanics use? So you'll see one of them down at the bottom. It's a pistol grip thing. Cost $39. Um, Dirt cheap. So what do I got to lose? Anyway, I thought I'd try making a bit for one, and scrounged up some material. So let's go and make a bit for a $39 pneumatic hammer and see if it's any good. Unbelievably, I didn't get a good shot of the piece of steel I want to use. That's it you're looking at. It's actually some part for another kind of impact hammer. It's got a shaft that fits into an impact hammer, and the other end is just a taper. It's obviously meant to fit some sort of head, like a bush hammer head or something like that. It's a commercial thing. I think it's marked Skill or some company like that, but it's part of a kit or something that I don't remember even where it came from. But it looks like a good piece of steel. It's about the right size. It's octagonal, and it's got a shaft already, the wrong size shaft, too big, turned on one end of it. So I just have to turn down that end to make it the right length and diameter to fit into the tool. Then it needs a wide spot to stop it from going, from flying out, and it needs to be thin again so that the clip that holds it in can have something to grab onto. There's the original bit I'm copying. This one is for ripping metal. It's got this sort of like the fletch of an arrow in the back for ripping through sheet metal. But I only care about the end I'm holding in my fingers, which is a short shaft, like 1.25 inches long, and then it has that wide spot, and then another wider shaft between my thumb and middle finger. And that's wide part is where the spring that holds the a spring on the gun just holds the bit from flying out. This is super simple. It's really just two slightly different diameters. One that fits in the gun, and then it's a little wider on the outside, and then it has that thick ring. So it's really, this is really going to be crude. I went and sawed about 1/2 inch off the end. It was a little bit too long. No point in showing that. I had the cutting head mounted at an angle, and I decided I wanted to square that up before I continued here. So that's why I'm going to stop and start again. I didn't like the way it looked at an angle. So I squared up the angle that the cutter head is going to come into the steel at. Now I'm going to just touch it off so that I get within 1/1000th of an inch of exactly where it should be. I'm going to touch it off, and I'm just going to make a couple of passes to get it exactly down to size. It's not far from size now. I only had to come down a few hundredths of an inch. So that's the 1 1/4 inch long by about a little over 3/8 of an inch thick shaft. So that will now fit into the gun properly. But now I have to just pare down that octagonal section to just leave um, a ring around it, you know, the full size of the octagon. But I'm going to remove that. I'm going to make that shaft where the octagon part is now smooth and quite a bit smaller because it needs to fit on both sides of a steel clip. You'll see when it's done. It looks just like the, it's going to look just like the base on the other one. See, there you go. So where my thumb and forefinger are is what I'm going to remove from this shaft so that it grips that, that spring properly. So I'm going to speed through this pretty fast. It's a lot of passes on this quite hard steel. That's a carbide cutter, and but this is a little teeny baby lathe, so it's only going to take off about a hundredth of an inch at a time, a little more, 10 or 15 one-thousandths of an inch. So I'm just going to speed through. Bzz, bzz, bzz. You can see smoke pouring off it from the oil, and every once in a while I'm stopping to measure to make sure I'm closing in on the right size. And when it's done, it's going to come out of there, and it should fit right into the drill or into the pneumatic gun. Looks like about the last pass. I'm checking to make sure because it's pretty hot. You can see the smoke pouring off it from the cutter, but it's cool enough to hold, but it's pretty hot. So there it is, and now we have to finish it up. There it is in the gun. Looks like it fits. See, it's supposed to be loose like that, and that clip just keeps it from bouncing out. And now here it is. We've still got that blank end on it. It's just a taper to fit in some kind of tool. So now we have to take it and grind it into a punch. I'm only going to show the tail end of this grinding. It's just endless bearing down on the grinding wheel to carve that round thing into that long tapered triangle shape. It's pretty boring. I had to don't usually wear gloves when using a tool like this, but I had to put it on because it was just getting the sparks spraying from it were just setting fire to my hands. But it didn't take too long. I guess it was probably half an hour of grinding to get it all done. But now it looks pretty nice, and it's ready to heat treat. Step 1 of heat treating. Heat treating is a 2-step process. First, you have to bring the metal up to cherry red, at which point it undergoes a structural change in its crystalline shape. It becomes very fluid inside, and then you quickly chill it by dunking it into cold water. That makes the steel as hard as this steel is capable of becoming, which is too hard. If you drive it into a piece of stone, it's likely to shatter. You can just put it in a vise and hit it with a hammer and break it. So you then bring the temperature up slowly throughout the length of the chisel, and until the tip gets to the tempering temperature that you desire, which backs off on the hardness. It's actually softening it. Tempering isn't hardening, it's the opposite, it's softening. So we'll then gauge the temperature at the tip where we want it to be maximally hard. We'll gauge that by watching the colors change as heat moves up the shaft. So first step is going to be to get it cherry red, then quench it in cold water. Then we're going to the idea is after that we'll temper it. But something's going to go wrong with this initial heat treat. So I'll just show you. So I speeded through the heating, and in just a second I'm going to quench it when it seems to be cherry red. Shh. Now letting it in slowly, more and more, and there we go. It's probably getting down below the tempering temperature now. So you have to remember that there's heat stored inside the mass of metal that can move back into the part you're trying to heat treat. So you have to make sure it gets nice and cold. So I ran to get a file, and what I want to do is test and make sure that I actually hardened it. And I do this every time I harden something, and it always works, but this time it didn't work. It didn't get hard. And I think I see, looking at the tape, why it didn't get hard. I think I was a little light on the temperature. I don't think I went quite as hot as I should have. And then I think I chilled it. I immersed it too slowly. I should have just plunged it in and dunked it. There's sort of reasons why you go in a little bit at a time, but I think there's just too much mass behind it, and it didn't chill fast enough. So it's time to get out the big guns. I've got another propane torch sitting here. This is kind of a big piece of steel to be doing with propane torches. So I've just mounted that in the vise, got that on, and now I'm going to have 2 propane torches on it. So I'll get a larger amount of the metal to red hot, and now I'm going to dunk it. We'll see if we can make it get hard this time. The harding is very much all or nothing. It gets either as hard as it can get, or nothing happens. Tempering is the phase where you modify it. And you can only go harder to softer, not the other way around. Well, you might say, well, why not just blast it and make it as hot as you can before you go? Good question. But the problem is, if you get it too hot, if you get it sort of beyond cherry red into where it gets into these more incandescent colors, you can actually modify the steel so you can't get back to a reasonable place. So I was a little too careful not to go too far, and I didn't go far enough, is really what happened. It looks a lot hotter in this picture than it really is. It's not white hot like that. It's just a trick of the color in the camera. It's actually just approaching cherry red. So you could probably see I got it more of it a brighter cherry red, and I dunked it deeper in the cold water and swished it around, and this time it got hard. I ran the file over it, and the file just sort of skates on it. It doesn't bite in at all. To do that, we have to be able to watch the color changes on the metal. So I'm going to take it on the wet wheel and grind to a fairly good finish. I'm going to do the finish grinding because the next phase you don't have to worry about fine thin edges getting burned or anything in the heat. So it's a kind of a subtle motion with a punch. It's not really a straight side. You kind of want to make it a slight curve. So the very tip, it's a duller angle than it would be otherwise. Otherwise, they're too prone to bending and breaking at the tip. So they generally have a little bit of a curve in. It's not just a triangular spike. Now I meant to show the tempering, but somehow that clip, I must not have had the camera on when after this bit. So I can't show you the actual tempering. It just involved putting the heat on the middle of the shaft, a couple of inches behind the point, and then letting it warm up there until you could see the surface color changes start to march their way up away from where the flame is on the metal and towards the tip. And when the tip gets to sort of a straw color, I quick dunk it in the water, and that freezes everything at that spot. It can actually stay at the tempering temperature all day. It doesn't do any harm, but it's much hotter down at the base. So that temperature is radiating up to the tip. So you have to quickly quench it. All right, so let's find out if this thing worked. We're back out in the outside workshop, and sure enough, it has the wrong kind of coupling on it, so I got to swap the coupling for one taken out of another tool. For some reason known only to the gods of industry, there are two almost identical looking kinds of couplings that do exactly the same job, but they're different. And of course, half of my tools have one and half of my tools have the other. So I'm just replacing that coupling, and we're going to see what happens. Let's see if this works. Holy shit, does that work? Oh my God. Check this out. Oh my jumping Jesus. Ho ho ho! and let's look at the tip. Tip is untouched, pretty much immaculate. I hope you can see it. Holy jumping Jesus, is that better? Damn, I have been to the mountaintop. I'm on cheap. Let's see what this looks like. Making something out of metal and it works just brings out the religious side of me. God, it's really pretty funny. But it works like crazy. I mean, it's really good steel. I thought it would have blunted by now. It just blasts the stone off. It's a safe bet that any point or chisel is going to go blunt under that level of impact, though. So I think what I'll do is I'll make a fistful of them so I can use them all up, sharpen them all at once, use them all up, sharpen them all at once. To do that, I might experiment first, though, because I won't be able to find, you know, this exact piece of steel I made this from. This is really nice steel, but I've got plenty of 01 tool steel laying around I can use. This is great. It's a $39 hammer from the Home Depot. It's the Husky House brand POS. And they make harder hitting ones. This is the mini baby one. They make a harder hitting one that's called medium length. This is short. So it has the piston has a short throw on it. But just works like crazy, man.